Hey everyone, my name is Kathleen and today we'll be painting this Common Kingfisher using a realistic and expressionist style. The photo that we'll be using today as reference for the Common Kingfisher is from Sir Rams Lopez, who is a bird enthusiast and an excellent photographer here in the Philippines. So I just flipped the image. I'm using a Sonnet White Nights watercolor paints as well. And also I'm using an Etchr Lab The Perfect Sketchbook 300 GSM. Here are my tissue and my water, as well as my brushes. I'm using a round brush, one synthetic brush, and one real hair brush. Why I have these two, it's just for me to show you the difference between the synthetic brush, the one on my left, and a real hair brush. So the synthetic brush has a great snap. When we talk about snap, that's the ability of the brush to go back to its original position. So when I wet these two, you can see also that the synthetic brush is more of a bullet shape. And the one on the right is a real hair brush. It has a more curved belly. That means it holds more water to it. And if I bend these bristles, you'd notice that the real hair brush doesn't go back to its original shape as much as the synthetic brush does. So those are the two round brushes I have, but you can either use the real hair brush or the synthetic brush. Either ways, we're going to end up with the same result. And with that being said, I think we can begin. Whenever I'm painting birds, I start with the realistic side. You always have to tackle the hardest or most challenging parts before you move towards the easier tasks. So it's kind of the same process with painting birds. We paint the most detail, the realistic ones. So starting with a wet area so that I can lay down my first layer for the belly. So here you can see I'm trying to match the color from the image. It has sort of this gold ochre or mixed with a little bit of orange color, so I'm doing just that. And now it's time to lay down the paints. This is a real-time video, so whatever I'm doing here is nothing is sped up. Now that I'm done with the belly region, I'm now tackling the wings. So it has this beautiful royal blue, but with a hint of green shade. So I'm laying down the wet area for that. Building up the darker tonal values on this area, and we are not focusing on the details just yet. We know that for you to be able to make a hard edge, you have to make sure that the layer is dry, so we're just focusing on the initial layer, the color, the dominant color of the wings. Sometimes what I do, especially for smaller pieces, instead of focusing on the first layer first, which is the lightest tones or lightest colors, I lay down the darkest tones. So in that way, I wait for that to dry, and what happens is if I glaze on top of it, it has this automatic shadows. Moving towards the head, I'm laying down the base color, which is a little more on the darker blue side. I also used a lighter version of that same color to make the base color for the beak. So here I was testing out if the layer was dry enough for me to make a hard edge for the details, but I realized when I dropped the paint it was still a little too wet, so I needed to wait longer for that one. I noticed that it's too wet because the paint spreads too quickly, so I used that same color to move to other portions of the bird which needed working. The eyes are the most important part for me. I think it's what captures the soul of the bird, so you have to be very careful at this step. And since we're working on a smaller piece and with a relatively small brush, it's easy to get filled up with a lot of water, so it's important to be mindful of the amount of water that your brush is carrying. So this is the second try to see if the paper was dry enough for me to add the details, and it was. So I proceeded with doing that, taking advantage of the shape or the tip of the round brush, which makes perfect details or suggestive details for the wings. And so with that, I will let this piece dry before I add in the white details on top of the wings. And let's move forward to the expressive marks. In doing these expressive marks, I'm considering a lot of things in my thought process, including which direction should the expressive mark should go, what color should it be. For this piece, I specifically wanted the expressive mark to go from the top left corner and runs down to the bottom right corner. For this part, I needed to wet the area where I wanted the paint to flow before I added the darkest colors of that paint, which is right here at the back of the bird. And so when I kind of merge those two wet areas together, it will create these beautiful bleeds where the watercolor is at work and I am not controlling anything. And that's what makes this process so beautiful. It's so unpredictable, yet so enjoyable. And now for the fun part, the splatters. Even the splatters, I consider where I want to put them, where I want to confine them, which direction should it go. All of those are part of the thought process that I include or consider during the planning stage of this piece. Just adding the final details at the wing area, and that's it. We're done. So I hope you enjoyed watching or following along, and if you did, feel free to tag me at Dear to Our Hearts on Instagram. I am so excited to see your works, but until then, happy painting!